Hey everyone, how's it going? This post is going to be a little bit different compared to what I normally share on my blog, but I'm really excited about it and I hope you are too. A couple weeks ago, somebody from MakeBlock reached out to me and asked me if I was interested in reviewing their xTool M1 laser/blade cutting machine. I've come across a few laser cutters for consumers in the last few years, but I've held off on buying one because, well, they're not exactly cheap. So you can imagine my excitement when they offered to send me one for review. MakeBlock sent me the xTool M1 10-watt Deluxe, which includes a premium materials package. So let's do an unboxing video to see what's inside and make some projects. Okay, so first off, the shipping was very fast. It took less than a week from the date that it was dispatched for it to reach my door. The package was really big and heavy. It was approximately 50 pounds according to the UPS shipping info, and I lugged it up the stairs to the second floor on my own. Can you believe it? First thing out of the box were two cutting mats. The blue one is a light grip, and the pink one is meant for fabric. Then there's the rotary attachment tool, four risers, and rotary accessory kits, which I won't talk about in this video because I still need some time to figure out how to use these. Then there's the xTool M1 Premium Material Package. It wasn't until I took it out of the box that I realized that most of the weight came from this package because it was very heavy. I was really excited to see what kind of materials were included so that I can start playing with the xTool M1 right away. So, right out of the materials package, there was a quick cheat sheet for reference on the materials included and all the settings to use them with. Then we have a canvas bag, a package that included two pieces of plywood sheets, some PVC sheets, a stack of craft paper, and then there's two little packages of wooden gift tags and some string inside. Some metal tags in different shapes, two wooden coasters, a necklace with a pendant, a business card holder, a cell phone holder, and two slate coasters. There's a stack of metal business cards, three sheets of faux leather, a stack of sticker paper to print and make your own stickers. There's two sheets of transfer paper. There's some self-adhesive vinyl, and there's also heat transfer vinyl. Taking out the actual xTool M1 was a bit awkward by myself because it was bigger than what my arm can wrap around and kind of heavy, so I needed Hanson's help with that. The reason it was so heavy was because it held other items inside. So inside the xTool M1, there is a thank you note, a very basic user manual, a basic material package that included a sheet of plywood, self-adhesive vinyl, a sticker sheet, faux leather, and a dog tag. A small box with 5 replacement blades, a tube of Peng Shang, which turned out to be grease, cable to plug into your computer, a power cord, a hose, an exhaust pipe with attachments to connect to the xTool M1 machine, triangular prisms, and then at the very bottom you have 2 more cutting mats. The exhaust pipe wasn't too difficult to install. You don't even need a screwdriver for this part. Although I found that it was easier to put the metal ring over the hose and try to fit it over the exit rather than trying to fit the ring over the pipe afterwards. And then, of course, there's the power cable. The exhaust pipe should really be vented outside, so I had the xTool sit on the corner of my desk and the exhaust pipe leading out the window. Can you imagine what my neighbors might be thinking? So before I turned it on, I also installed the blade into the machine. All you have to do was grab onto the gold piece of the cutter and pull it down. Then take one of the blades, remove the protective cap, and drop it into the blade attachment. My blade ended up extending out quite a bit, but you should only have the 45-degree angle of the blade showing. So to adjust it, you just need to hold on to the grip at the bottom and the grip at the top and turn them in opposite directions to move the blade up and down. It's not too difficult to put it back in. Once you have it in the right place, the magnet will just naturally attract it back to the right position, although I did have some difficulty the first time around. I tried turning it on by pressing the big round button on the front at first, but nothing happened. Then I realized that the power button was actually on the back, which is smart because you don't want your kids coming into the room and turning on your laser. Once you turn it on, it takes about 15 to 20 seconds for it to warm up, and then after that, you'll hear this constant humming sound, even when it's not in use. Before you start using the xTool M1, you're going to have to download the xTool Creative Space software, which can be found for free on their website. So the first project that I wanted to engrave on is this round pendant for a necklace. I took the charm off the jump ring using some tools. Then I used some rubbing alcohol to clean off any fingerprints from the pendant before putting it into the machine. Once I placed the pendant into the xTool and closed the lid, the image of my working surface refreshed on the xTool Creative Space. As you can see, there's the pendant. The next thing I wanted to do was import an image. I selected an SVG file of an image that I created earlier today. I shrunk it down to the size that would fit the metal pendant. Then I selected the material I was working with. After that, I selected engrave instead of score, because scoring would just draw the lines and won't color it in. Once I was ready, I clicked on process. Before it actually starts engraving, I can frame the project and make sure that the area I wanted to engrave was accurate. After framing is completed, I clicked on Start to send the project to the xTool M1. The project took about 5 minutes. Right after taking the metal pendant out of the machine, you can see that there's a tinge of brown on the top of the engraving. All I needed to do was to spray on some cleaning solution and it comes right off with a towel. It looks fantastic and I've been wearing it ever since. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to try to engrave is a metal business card. The metal business cards come in yellow, black, magenta, and blue. I've never touched a metal business card before, but it's thinner than I thought it was going to be and very bendable. I only had a PNG image of my original business card, and when I initially uploaded, I realized that the size of the metal business cards are slightly larger than the size of a regular business card. So I went to Canva and created a slightly larger business card just for this project. I imported my new business card into the xTool Creative Space, and when I clicked on the image, I can set the grayscale. I didn't want it to be too dark, so I set it low. I then selected my material, positioned my image, pressed process, framed my image, and then clicked start. The estimated time to print this business card wasn't too far off. But just as I imagined, there's no real grayscale to engraving on business cards. The number 2 that overlap with a yellow O didn't really show up very well unless you look at it from a certain angle, and the end of my email looks like it's cut off. So if you have a very colorful logo, it might just end up looking like a big blob at the end. I also tried out the QR code to see if my phone would read it. I think the reflection on it made it a bit more difficult, but in the end, my phone was able to pick it up. The next thing I wanted to try is cutting wood. I wish that the user manual actually gave more information on how to use all the accessories that were included in the box, because if it wasn't for researching prior to receiving the xTool M1, I wouldn't know that these triangular prisms are used for raising the wood for cutting. So for my first wood cutting project, I decided to make a Chinese character coaster. The initial project came from a Chinese lantern that xTool had as a part of their project center. But instead of making a whole lantern, I decided to just take a part of it and make a coaster out of it. I resized the project and made sure that I wanted every line to be cut out and not scored or engraved. I then selected Process and then sent the project to the xTool M1 to start cutting. I was very impressed with the precision cutting. This project only took about 10 minutes to complete. You can see some of the pieces fall down as it was getting cut. I picked off the remaining pieces when I took it out, but you could literally drop it and it would just all fall off. There's a slight bit of charring on the back, but it's not bad at all. There was a sticky residue that was on the base plate and the triangular prisms after laser cutting wood. I don't know what this is, but I used some rubbing alcohol to clean it and it wasn't too hard to rub off. So after cleaning, I put the wood back in for my next project. I opened the project for my Disney key and added some text. I love that the xTool M1 has a camera that captures my working surface. This allows me to position the key however I wanted to get the most out of my material. Right after pressing frame, it asked me to clean the lens before I started. I thought that maybe it was just some dust particles, so I took a dry cotton swab and brushed it around to get whatever dust that was on there and continued on. As it was cutting, I noticed a huge amount of charring. I got scared and didn't want it to catch fire, so I quickly stopped the machine by canceling the job on the computer. As you can see here, there's a lot of burning, but it never even burned through the wood. I checked the settings multiple times and wanted to make sure I got the right setting this time. Everything seems correct, so I started the job again. Unfortunately, it still resulted in a lot of charring, and again, it didn't cut through the wood. So I tried cleaning the lens again, this time with some lens cleaner and a bent cotton swab. The results were better, and it's cute, but it's still not great, and the edges were definitely not as crisp as the coaster I made earlier. There's clearly a black outline around the key, and it didn't look great. So I did a thorough lens clean by taking off the bottom base plate, turning the machine on its side so that I can clean whatever residue I can see on the lens and try it again. This time I can see already with the engraving that the letters were already darker. And the lines were much cleaner as well when cutting. I guess when the lens wasn't clean, the laser wasn't able to focus the beam to cut through the wood. You can see the comparison between the two where the bottom one looks much cleaner and has no char around the edges, and this is just because the lens wasn't clean enough. So, the last thing I wanted to test out was the blade cutting function on the self-adhesive vinyl. You start by placing the blue cutting mat on the bottom of the machine. Remember to remove both the clear sheet on the top and bottom of the cutting mat so that it can stick to the base plate of the machine and the vinyl when you place it on top. So for this, I wanted to cut a sun sticker. I moved the sun image to the top left corner of my self-adhesive vinyl so that I can preserve more of my material for the next project. So on the software, I put the sun image in the corner of my vinyl, and it appeared to be right even when I was framing it to mark the area for cutting. However, when it actually began to cut, it seemed off. So when I took it out, you can see that the sun was cut approximately an inch away from where I wanted it to cut. I had to cut the sun out so that I can get to the sticker. But as you can see, I now have a 1-inch strip that I cannot use. So I put it back into the machine and gave it another go. I positioned the sun to cut right next to it. For this cut, I added an outline to the SVG file so I don't have to manually cut the sun out using scissors. This time it cut better, and most importantly, it cut where I asked for it to be cut, and I can make the most use out of my sheet of vinyl. The outline feature is fantastic for this use, so I can peel around the area of my sticker. So after removing all the unwanted parts of the vinyl, I used some Scotch tape to transfer it to my lantern. Craft stores actually sell something called a transfer tape that's used for this purpose, but I've never owned a cutting machine before, so I didn't have anything like that at home. Scotch tape was the closest it comes. So what I did was that I layered on the tape and made sure that it stuck to all the individual pieces. So when I peeled it off from the wax paper, it would still be in the same positions. Once I got it off the wax paper, I just applied it to where I wanted it to go and pressed down. Once it's stuck onto the item, I removed the Scotch tape. Okay, now let's talk about the things that I like about the xTool M1 and some things that they have room for improvement. Let's start with some things that they could improve on first. One thing they could improve on is their Wi-Fi connectivity. The xTool M1 came with a cable that plugs in a USB-A to a USB-B. This cable is meant for plugging your machine directly into your computer. However, my MacBook Air only has USB-C ports, so I couldn't use the cable. I've been meaning to buy an adapter, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And in order to bring the xTool onto the Wi-Fi network, you do have to plug it into a computer the first time around. So I had to bring out an older computer that had the proper USB ports to get the xTool M1 onto the Wi-Fi network before I was able to connect it with my MacBook. Unfortunately, I found that the xTool M1's Wi-Fi connectivity to be very spotty and disconnects me quite often. This led to slower productivity and quite a bit of frustration whenever this happened. Approximately 80% of the time, the machine disconnects from my computer during the engraving or cutting process when I was connected to it over Wi-Fi. Fortunately, this did not disrupt the job and the xTool M1 continued to cut and engrave as it's supposed to. The next thing to note is that your project size is limited by the size of the machine. I had a cardboard project that I started over a year ago but abandoned because it became too tedious for me to cut out all the little pieces by hand using a precision knife. I thought that if I could use the laser cutter to help me with this project, it could help me cut down a lot of work and I wouldn't have to cut out all the little pieces by hand. Unfortunately, the pieces were just too big to fit inside the xTool M1. Now let's talk about the things that I do like about the xTool M1. The first thing that I love about the xTool M1 is the camera. The camera allows for very easy placement of what you want to engrave where you want to engrave it. It helps take the guesswork out. Although I didn't try this, small batch jobs are definitely possible with the xTool M1. The accuracy of the camera and the xTool Creative Space software was pretty precise. Except for my first vinyl cut that ended up being about an inch away from where I thought I placed it for some reason. But aside from that, I had no other issues. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is their easy-to-use software. The xTool Creative Space software is available to download for free on the xTool website and is available for Windows and Mac using both Intel and Apple chips. They also include a number of pre-built projects in the software so that you can try out your machine right away. I like how I can use existing SVG files in the program. However, I wasn't able to save or export what I create in the xTool Creative Space as an SVG file, which makes sharing projects with other users not using the xTool more difficult. The next thing I want to talk about is neither likes nor dislikes, but just some things to consider. The xTool M1 can be used indoors, but it needs ventilation. I actually love the enclosed system of the xTool M1 because it means that I can use it indoors as long as I'm by a window where I can ventilate the machine using the hose. Unfortunately, there can still be a smell that lingers in the room, especially from cutting wood. Also, it can be quite cold living in Canada and having the window open during the winter time while working on projects. But just so you know, the xTool does sell a smoke purifier that allows you to connect directly to the ventilation so you can work in an enclosed space with no windows. The next thing I want to talk about is neither likes nor dislikes, but just some things to consider. The first one being the size of the machine. I wouldn't say that the xTool M1 is huge, but you do need a designated space for it. The size of the xTool M1 can be a bit cumbersome to take in and out of its package when not in use, unlike a toaster oven. Not to say that you can't do it, but it won't be easy. If I was still living in my 700 square foot apartment with my family, I didn't even have a desk, let alone a room for a laser cutter machine. So, this is definitely something to keep in mind if you live in a small space. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the price. A simple search on Google shows that laser machines can range from $3,000 to $4,000 easily. The price of the xTool M1 and everything that I received from MakeBlock sells for just over $2,000 regular price. If you look at their website, they do have sales from time to time. And if you think about it, this is a two-in-one machine. You're not only getting a laser machine, but also a blade cutting machine at the same time. If you're a general crafter or hobbyist that's just crafting for fun, that price might be a bit steep. However, if this is your next business idea, the xTool M1 is easily a handmade business in a box and could very well be worth it. Not to sound cliche, but with the xTool M1 laser and blade cutter, your imagination is the limit. I hope you enjoyed this unboxing and review video of the xTool M1. See you next time!